All right. Well, we're joined by a legendary caddy. And
Have you got somebody else in mind? Who are you talking about?
Well, I was gonna say, I think you're almost a little bit. Nah, I was gonna say a dying breed because I feel like everyone is bringing out their mates now to caddy. Like that's more of a growing trend, whereas you are like a lifer. Like
well,
you.
yeah.
So how did you? For our American audience who maybe isn't as familiar, how did you get into this?
It was early 1980s, and there was a European Tour event came to my home golf club, Bingley, in West Yorkshire, in the north of the UK. I was a 15-year-old kid. There was no money in the game. You caddy for a guy for the week and they give you a dozen balls and say thanks very much. It was... And me and a few guys, juniors, we decided to follow a few tournaments around the UK, and we caddied a handful of tournaments for no money. And then my best friend said, let's go to Spain on a 6 weeks holiday, vacation for your American audience. So I went down to caddying the Spanish Open and the Portuguese Open, etc. And I ended up caddying for a guy from Zimbabwe called Tony Johnston, who you'll probably be familiar with.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him from commentary.
Yeah. Hey, listen, and he finished 7th in the golf tournament. Now, if you finish 7th in a PGA Tour event, you probably get $300,000 or $400,000. But 7th back in 1983 was $1,000, and as a caddy, you got 5%. So I got $50 for the week, and as a caddy, you had to pay your own way to get to Portugal.
Which today would buy you about 2.5 Chipotles.
Something like that, yeah. So I got $50, but you have to pay your own way to get to Portugal. A caddy couldn't afford to get on an aeroplane, so I had to hitchhike and sleep on buses, sleep on trains. I slept in a bus one night, I slept in tents. There was no yardage books, you had to do your own yardages. There was no range balls. You weren't allowed in the clubhouse. There was no credit cards. So obviously no telephones or anything. So listen, it was a tough existence. If you said, I'll meet you at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, you lost contact with that guy for weeks until you just turned up on that spot you said you would be,
Hope he's there. Hope he's there.
Yeah. It was a very different place. And caddies, there might be 25 caddies get on a train and travel for 2 days from one side of Europe to the other, and with a crate full of beer and a set of playing cards and a guitar, and they were the best times, honestly. The camaraderie, and even though there was no money, it was way much more fun back then. It was great times, and yeah, I would not swap it for the world. In fact, I was in the caddy tent in America last year. I don't have to mention names, but there was one caddy says, you know what, I just flew in on my player's private jet last night, and the seat didn't recline fully. It only went 3/4 of the way back, and there was no Wi-Fi on the plane. I just went, shut it, will you? He understood. But hey, listen, I've just come back from New Zealand a couple of days ago, and I spent the night at Steve Williams' house talking of legendary caddies, and to see what he has down there. I mean, what a beautiful country that is. It was amazing.
So how did you link up with Seve?
I'd caddied for 8 years. I did a couple of years with Hugh Bjørn from South Africa, and then I did 5 years with Gordon Brown Jr. Caddied in a couple of Ryder Cups with Gordon, who was a really good player. And in 1990, I decided I'd had enough of caddying because you couldn't make any money. And I accepted a job in Yorkshire where I live as an assistant professional myself. I was a decent player, but nothing special. But I took the job as an assistant pro. And I told Gordon Brown Jr., Gordon, I'm finishing caddying at the end of the season, so I'm giving you 6 weeks notice to find another caddy. We went to Germany for the German Masters, and in the first 2 rounds, we got paired with Seve Ballesteros and David Feity. And on the second hole of the tournament, Seve came up to me and says, what you doing next season? And I says, well, I'm finishing caddying because I can't make any money, and I've been offered a job back home as an assistant pro. He went, no, you're too young to retire, and I'm looking for a caddy, eh? I'm like, oh, okay. And I just walked off. I never gave him an answer. And when I was lying in bed in my hotel that night, I was thinking to myself, you are some idiot. Basically, your boyhood hero, who was the Tiger Woods of his generation in Europe, has basically asked you if you want the job, and you never gave him an answer. So I jumped out of bed, I ran to the golf course the next morning, and I wrote my name and address on a piece of paper. Obviously, there's no emails or telephones back then. And as I got to the golf course, he'd already teed off. So I followed him up the first hole, and as he came off the first green, I gave him the piece of paper and said, if you want to bring me out of retirement, you know where I am, you know where to find me. And 2 weeks later, funnily enough, I don't know if you can see it, but there's the letter right there from Severiano Ballesteros, basically saying, Billy, I've been watching your attitude as a caddy, and I like your attitude as a caddy. Now, these are my conditions. You can't speak to the press. You can't argue on the golf course. You must do your own yardages. It were like 6 or 7, bang, take that, take that, take that. So you knew the boss was from a letter. And he basically said, give me an answer and happy Christmas. And that was it. So, yeah, I started 1991. That's how I got the job.
So, you know, obviously with these legends, so much gets written and said about them. And obviously, Seve, may he rest in peace. I know it's a big question. What was the man like?
He was, he'd be up there with the most evilest golfers to play against head to head, you know, in match play, or if you're coming down the stretch, trying to win, fighting against Seve Ballesteros. He was the ultimate warrior. It's like he played golf with boxing gloves on. You know, he wanted to just punch your head in. Yeah, he was never going to be a friend when it come to winning a golf tournament. He was the ultimate warrior, and he was a hard man. You ask any of the guys, especially at Ryder Cups, you know, in the 80s and 90s, what a hard man to play against he was, and it was win at all costs, and he would stand over you and hover over you, but you would feel the pressure breathing down your neck on every shot you hit, you know.
After Seve came who?
I worked for Darren Clark for a decade.
And then there was Thomas Bjørn. And that the reason I wanted to ask, you were on the bag at Royal St. George's, am I correct?
Oh, thanks for reminding me. It's 20 years this time, and I'm just getting over it.
We had Thomas on the show recently, and I didn't have the heart really to bring it up. But, you know, that was one of, you know, for our, you know, younger audience or American audience, if you guys don't know about Thomas Bjørn at Royal St. George's, go watch the video on YouTube. He's winning the Open. I guess I'll let you decide that describe that moment and sort of what a caddy says in that moment, or what they don't say.
Well, listen, people will never remember this, but in the first round, he hit it in a bunker on the 17th hole, and he left it in the bunker and hit the sanding hanger, and then he chops it out, and he finished off the hole. And as we're walking off the green, he turned and said to me, "Can you believe I did that?" I went, "Can I believe you did what?" He said, "Made a double bogey there." I said, "Well, Thomas," I said, "you didn't actually, because she hit the sanding hanger. It's a 2-shot penalty, so it's actually an 8. And Tom Lehman, who was playing, we came across, says, "Yeah, Billy, it's a 2-shot penalty." So I actually caddied for somebody who hit less shots than anybody else in the Open Championship.
Wait, so he left the ball in the bunker and then hit the sand while the ball was still in the bunker?
Correct. 2-shot penalty. So he actually made an 8. And he still had a 3-shot lead playing the 15th hole on the last round. And yeah, I'd been out and walked the pins that morning, and I looked at the 16th pin, and it was like 5 feet right of the pin. It was an elephant's graveyard, or you'd half a Great Britain to the left, you know. So obviously you're saying to him, just stay at the TV tower, middle of the green, nowhere else, 30 feet. 2-putt and get out of there, you know. It was a 6-iron, just middle of the green, quite a straightforward shot, really. And as he hit it, you know, I knew it set off straight at the flag. I knew where it was going because I'd been out and looked at the pins that morning, and I just thought, that's dead. And it was basically just splash it out 15 feet past the hole and make your bogey and still have a 2-shot lead, you know. And he duffed it out, rolled back to his feet, chopped it out, rolled back to his feet, and then it finished 6 inches in his footprint. And, you know, he basically dropped the claret jug right there and then. And he bogeyed 17, and he lost the Open by a shot. I thought about that moment every day for 6 months, because I've been to every Open Championship since I was a 9-year-old boy. So it's 50 years. I've never missed an Open in 50 years, and it's the one trophy you ever want to win. And it was, yeah, it was proper heartbreaking for me because it's the one tournament you desperately wanted to win as a caddy. So yeah.
And when you're walking up 17, you're walking up 18. Is it dead silent?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, you're still in the game. It's you're still tied for the lead. And it's you're trying to dust yourself down, get on with it. Don't worry about it. Let's move on. And it just didn't happen. And then yeah, it was tough to stomach that one. And obviously Lee Westwood 3-putted the last at Turnberry to lose out by a shot to the Stuart Sink Tom Watson playoff. And there's been 3 or 4 Masters that
You were
got
also
away.
weren't you on the bag 08 US Open at Torrey Pines as well?
No, I started with Lee in 09. So yeah, but
okay.
I mean, Lee
So,
could
yeah,
have won. Lee could have won 6 majors. He was that good.
So good that he came up, because you're going back to Westie's bag if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
I saw
you might be mistaken, Dan, because I was meant to fly to Saudi Arabia yesterday, but Westie's he's got a wrist injury, so he's out for a month at best. But if it needs surgery, my live career will be over before it started. So we'll see what happens. Watch your space. I don't know. So let's just hope it's not too severe, but we'll see.
But you were on his bag when he got to number 1 in the world.
And he got to number 1 in the world, yeah.
But that's still, I mean, I know, because you caddy for Seve, didn't win a major with Seve. You caddy for Bjørn, didn't win a major with Bjørn. You caddy for Clark, didn't. Did the number 1 in the world, did that feel like an accomplishment, or did you still just really want that trophy?
No. I mean, listen, the players got to number 1 in the world through his consistency and how brilliantly he was tee to green, and listen, it's something that it'd be in the back of your mind. You caddy for the guy that got to number 1 in the world, but let's face it, nobody remembers runners up or who finished second in majors. It's all about winning major golf championships, and players' careers are defined by winning major championships. Let's face it, And some people will say, well, they don't count them as a fantastic player unless they've won multiple majors, But yeah, it's disappointing for Lee that he never won a major championship, because he was that good a player. I think he'd 9 or 10 top 3 finishes in major championships without winning one, So, but what a fantastic golfer.
You had a week caddying for a guy who won 15 major championships. So 2004, you got to caddy for Tiger. Tell me how that came about, and tell me if I think you told me this story once before, but what you remember from that week and from that experience in caddying for Tiger in 2004, which is kind of at the height of Tiger mania.
Yeah, it was 2005. It was the President's Cup, and we were on the range in Akron, Ohio, at the Bridgestone tournament. And Tiger came up to Darren Clark, who I was working for, and had a chat and walked away. And a couple of minutes later, Clarky turned to me and he said, "Do you know what that was all about?" I went, "No, what?" He says, "Well, Tiger's just come up to me and said that Steve Williams, his wife's having a baby. He's taken a couple of weeks off, and he's asked me if it's all right to... He's asked Darren if it's all right if he asked me to work for him." I went, "Really?" He says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And Lee Westwood was hitting balls 5 yards to the side of Clarky and said, "Billy, if you don't work for him, I will." And I went, "Yeah, good point, Westy, good point." Yeah, so I went up and said, "Yeah, it'd be great to caddy for you, Tiger." And it was funny, actually, because a few weeks later, I understood that a few of the American caddies had complained to Tiger, saying, "Hey, listen, we don't want a Euro in our locker room, this and that." And I went to Tiger and I said, "Look, Tiger," I said, "if it's going to cause you..." Because obviously I'm caddied in that many Ryder Cups, it's like I'm seen as the opposition, And I said, "Tiger, if it's going to cause you any problems, I'm quite happy to step aside." He says, "F them, Billy, you're caddying me." I went, "All right, fair enough." But yeah, it was an absolute gentleman, Tiger, to caddy for. His manners were impeccable. It was please and thank you for everything. And obviously, as a golfer, he's the best that ever lived, mate. I mean, if he'd have stayed with Butch Harmon and stayed injury-free, he'd have won 25 to 30 majors, in my opinion.
Wasn't there a story, though? I remember you told me the story about, you said something to him about not playing as much or kind of understanding the world he lived.
Yeah, listen, we came out of the locker room and I walked towards the first tee, and it was probably 200 yards deep 200 yards long, 10 deep either side, and they're screaming and shouting. It's hysterical, Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. And I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. My ears were bleeding. It was that loud, and Tiger's battling his way through the crowd. He's got pen marks all over his shirt, hats on sideways. You can see he's getting beat up walking through the crowd. And as you walk back to the first tee at the golf course in Washington, where it was, Robert Trent Jones, the first tee was back in the trees on its own, nobody else there. And I was stood in the middle of the tee on my own, and Tiger came up onto the tee. I said, you know what, Tiger, I just want to tell you something. I said, that reminds me of working for Seve. And they're the only two people of that aura of a rounder golfer. The only two people I've met in my career in 40 odd years that I would say the aura around Seve and the aura around Tiger they're the only two guys that get that. And I just turned to him. I said, look, Tiger, I know what you're going through. I said, you might be the best golfer that ever plays this game. You might have any woman in the world you want, and you might be a billionaire, but I won't swap your lives. And he said, thanks for that, Billy. At least somebody understands what I go through. And too right, I do, yeah. It's a very difficult life being Tiger. A fantastic player, but it comes with its limitations of what you can do in life. It must be difficult.
I have goosebumps hearing that. I also have goosebumps thinking about Brookline and about you winning with Fitzy. It's such a different experience for you because the guys you've mentioned, Fitzy is from a totally different generation. I mean, he's much, much, much younger than any of those guys were. And you got on his bag, quite a few years, I think, before he won the U.S. Open. Yeah. What was it like kind of adjusting to caddying for, he was a kid at that point?
Yeah, listen, it was, I'd finished with Westie at the back end of 2018, and a week later I got a call off Matt. And at that stage I was thinking, what, my caddying career's winding down a little bit. And you're sort of thinking of a couple of jobs you'd be interested in. And Matt was in my mind of one of those lads that you thought, what, be a nice, steady player, good player in Europe, might make a Ryder Cup team. He didn't have his PGA Tour card. And you're thinking, he'll probably win a tournament or two in Europe every year, maybe a nice little job, and he turned into a serious player, and I'm very impressed. His work ethic is second to nobody's. As soon as I started working for him, I said, this is Bernard Langer's love child. He's like, his work ethic is incredible. It's well documented about all the stats he keeps and everything, but he earns his stripes and he earns everything he gets, Matt. He's the ultimate pro. And listen, I had 6 great years with him and won big tournaments, won the Dubai tournament at the end of the year in Dubai, Hilton Head, and obviously the US Open. And, he won 5, 6, 7 tournaments, whatever it was, and a couple of Ryder Cups. So got to number 6 in the world. It was a lot of good times. And unfortunately, it's caddying and golfers are like, it's like football management. If your team's not playing great and you're not getting the results, something's got to give. And unfortunately, you find yourself going through the motions a little bit. And it goes without saying, it needs a shake-up and needs a bit of freshness. And unfortunately, that's what happened. But, I'm sure Matt will challenge and maybe win other majors. He's a fantastic golfer, and I respect him immensely.
What was that experience like on 18? Because obviously Matt's trying to win his first major, but you're trying to win your first major, and you've been doing it a lot longer than Matt. And it was tense, man. It was Scottie was already in the clubhouse. You're playing with Zalatoris, and he didn't make it easy on himself on that 18th hole.
Hey, listen, it's a funny story because at the start of the week, it was like I'd walked the golf course on the Monday, and I got to the 18th hole, and I was doing my yardages and getting the middle of the fairway and the width of the fairway, etc. And I decided in my mind the best tee shot was between 270 to 280 yards. It was the widest bit of the fairway. Obviously, the bunkers came in on the left and the rough came in on the right towards 290, 300 yards. So I was writing in my book at the time, tee shot 270, 280. And as I was writing it, Justin Rose came at the side of me. He said, "What do you see here, Billy?" And I said, "Well, I like a 3-wood up here, mate, to this area." He says, "Yeah, that's the play up here." I went, "That'll do for me, Rosie." Obviously a great player and won the US Open. Anyway, Matt played in the afternoon, and as we got to the 18th tee, he pulled out the driver, and I said, Matt, I like a 3-wood up here, 270 to 280 yards. And no, I know what you're saying, but I like driver. And he hit driver, and it finished through the fairway in the rough, and he chopped it out and chipped on and made a bogey. And I've never done this before. I said, Matt, I said, let's go back to the tee. I want you to hit another 6 tee shots, hit 3 drivers and 3 3-woods, and then tell me what you think. So I stayed up the fairway. He went back. He hit his 3 3-woods and 3 drivers, but he scattered them around a little bit. So there was no real conclusive evidence of what was best. And I just said, what do you think now? He said, no, I know what you're saying, but driver's the best club in my bag. I like driver up here. And he's obviously had success at the US Amateur, winning the round there. So I went, okay. I said, so when it comes to Thursday and we stand on this tee, I don't want any of this hindsight stuff, I says, I don't want you hitting it in the rough up there and say, why we're up here, what we're doing back there. He said, no, I'll hold my hands up, I'm happy hitting driver. I went, okay, I'll keep quiet. So obviously he played the first 3 rounds, driver, and he'd gone bogey, par, bogey. And we got to the 18th tee in the last round with a 1-shot lead, and I just thought, I've seen this horror movie too many times. I said, Matt, it's a 3-wood up here. Widest bit of the fairway, 275 yards, it's perfect. It'll only leave you a 9-iron, that's all it is. It's a 3-wood. He went, all right, Billy, and he pulled the 3-wood, and of course he hooked it in the bunker, and as we're walking off the tee, I'm punching myself in the face, thinking, you're just a jinx. Why didn't you shut up and let him hit driver? It's like... But he stopped 30 yards off the tee, and he turned round. I thought, here we go, he's going to start moaning, oh, what we're doing here. But he actually turned round and he said, Billy, he said, that was the right club. I went, all right, thanks for that, Matt. And we kept walking. I just thought, if that had been like a Thomas Bjørn or a Sergio or something, there'd have been a mound there with my crucifix on the top of it. Billy was buried here, But we got to the bunker, and my heart sank when I saw the ball under the island. I just thought it was dead. I thought we were going to have to chip it out, and Zalatoris was in the perfect position. But when we got to the bunker, it was a little bit further left than I thought. So again, I've done something else I'd never done. I sort of like plumb bobbed a 5-iron over the top of the ball, a foot left of the bank. And I picked a target at the back of the green. I just said, you see the floodlight in the tree at the back of the green? I said, if you hit it on that as hard as you can, this bank's not in play. And it was a perfect number. It was a 9-iron all day long. The club wasn't an issue, but the worst part of Fitz's game that year was his fairway bunker play. He kept hitting them fat. But because he had to cut it, he got the heel up, and I was walking away, and I turned around, he hit it already. And you just know, as when you've caddied so long, when he hit it and you look up, you're just like, you beautiful thing. You just know he'd flushed it. But the target was, all he could get was left edge of the green, and the pin was on the right. So he actually cut that shot probably 15 yards and to like 18, 20 feet behind the hole. And I reckon that was probably the PGA shot of the season. I don't know if it got voted it, but it should have done. It was an amazing golf shot. And as Zalatoris is over his putt to take it to a playoff, all I could say to Fitz was, get your mind ready for a playoff. Just expecting to hole it. Get your mind ready for a playoff. And obviously you were right behind the putt, and I'm just listening to the crowd because I'm side onto it. And as the noise levels get louder and louder, you just think he's holed it. And I've probably watched that putt 10 or 12 times since, and a foot short, it still can't miss. I can't believe it missed. And as you look across and the ball's still above ground, that's when I pull my hat down, my head in my hands, and all those Thomas Bjørn in the bunker and Darren Clark shanking it at Troon when he could have won, and Lee Westwood the multiple times he could have won majors just floated into the sky. And it was like there was no real shouting and get in there. All that was like just pure and utter relief that the monkey was off your back, that you finally caddied for somebody that won a major. So it was very, very special.
It was beyond special. My last question, we could be here all day, but I don't want to keep too much of your time.
I have all day. Don't worry about it.
you got up close and personal with Scottie last year. So you caddied for Colin Morikawa at Port Rush, and he was grouped with Scottie for the first 2 days. And what we've seen from Scottie these last 4 years has been remarkable. What was your impression of him those first 2 days?
Well, actually, we've played with Scottie a lot the last couple of years. Even with Fitz, played with him quite often. Listen, it's Tiger-esque. If you'd ask me if he's Tiger Woods, probably not right now. But the way he's going, who knows what we're going to be saying in 5 years' time? It's incredible. But there's one thing I'll say about Scottie Scheffler: the consistency. To say he's breakdancing when he hits it. He is, in the 40 odd years I've caddied, it's a big statement, his distance control is the best I've ever seen.
Better than you saying with the iron, it just always pin high.
His distance control is the best I've ever seen. Is he the best golfer? Maybe not, but his distance control. Lee Westwood, when he got to #1 in the world, bearing in mind Lee wasn't a great putter, as Scottie wasn't until, you know, Phil Kenyon has done great work with. But, you know, to be that good when you're not, and win that often when you're not putting your best, it just goes to show how good he is. And Lee Westwood's distance control back in the 2010, 2012 period, well, 2000 to probably 2015, Lee Westwood's distance control was incredible, and Scottie's is as good, if not better. Yeah, he's an amazing player, and his chipping's incredible as well. He chips in a couple of times every week as well. If he misses a green, he chips in.
It's a pretty good formula.
Yeah,
well, Billy,
yeah.
I just want to thank you for allowing me to pick your brain for a little bit.
No
you
problem.
are a legend of the game, and we really appreciate the time. And
Thank
I
you very
hope to
much.
see you out there soon. I don't know if it'll be a live event or a major, but I hope to see you out there soon.
Yeah, find me a job, will you?
I can send.
I'm not done yet. I'll be back out at some stage.
I know you will.
I just need to. I've just had a month in New Zealand on the beach, and my only worry was that somebody might harpoon me instead of a shark. You know, so I need to lose a bit of weight this next month and get myself back out there fit and enjoying what I've always done. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if there's one thread throughout this, it's that I thought my caddy career was over. There's another act left in there.
Yeah, I'll be back. As Schwarzenegger saying, I'll be back.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Billy.
Cheers, Dan. Pleasure, mate.